Hey, you want to hear about my favorite Souls-like? After From Software's massive success with their Soulsborne series, even creating an entirely new genre labeled as Souls-likes, many games have taken inspiration from this masterpiece of a trilogy. And while some of these inspirations being better or worse than the Soulsborne series is absolutely subjective, there is one game in particular that I enjoyed more than the trilogy. As you may have guessed from the thumbnail, I'm talking about Nioh 2. Its simple but fun story, the cool combat, the amount of build customization you get, and more, it all tends to meld into one difficult but rewarding experience. And I'm going to be honest, it was only after 300 hours that I was finally able to understand what I'm actually doing in this game. And I've been in the game so many times already.
You can? All this time you could?
Most of you won't need that much time to understand the game. I'm just that dense. But the game does have a lot to offer, and it might be overwhelming at the start.
Did you just commit homicide?
However, the more you play and mess around with the mechanics, the easier it is to understand. The story is not as cryptic as the Soul series, but it's nothing extremely complex anyway. But it managed to grab me and keep me engaged throughout the duration of the game. Combat itself is actually pretty fun, even if it's a bit complicated at first. Since I played this game quite a bit, I decided to use the weapons that I've had the least playtime with and haven't really touched throughout my game time, which ended up being the dual hatchets. I thought those weapons wouldn't appeal to me, and I couldn't have been more wrong. Even the weapons I thought that I would despise ended up being really fun for me. Liking pretty much every weapon in the game is quite the achievement. But since I love this game, take the comment with a grain of salt. Not everybody's gonna like every weapon, but there's a playstyle available for many people. When it comes to enemies, you'll be fighting both humans and yokai. When it comes to humans, there's not much variety because of human limitations. But when yokai are concerned, things change a little. There's all sorts of yokais, and even more in the DLC, obviously. But I think between enemies and bosses, humans and new yokais to worry about, you'll have a lot to deal with. And I think that's pretty awesome. Being able to see the new enemies and new bosses in each level was quite the experience, and it kept things fresh. I've been holding out, but it's time to talk about the game's gimmick, and probably one of my favorite things about the game in general. You, the main character, are half yokai, which means once you kill other yokai, you have a chance to gain their soul core. Equipping said soul core allows you to use that yokai's ability in combat, and it also gives several passive buffs, but that's another can of worms I'm not getting into. Being able to use the enemy's abilities is already pretty awesome, as it elevates the curiosity of finding new yokai and wondering what ability you'll get from it next. But that is obviously not all. As you fight enemies, you'll fill up a circle in the top left. Besides giving you other passives when equipped, the spirit within you does something else. It allows you to become a full yokai of your own. You are the boss now, with new moves and everything. Sadly and naturally, this doesn't last forever. And while there are some other passive skills that extend your time in yokai form, you're still limited to the amount of time you have in that form. To add on to that, each spirit has a variation of 3 other forms you can assume. It goes by Brute, Feral, and Phantom. Or if you're like me, red, blue, and purple. Being able to transform into a yokai yourself is probably one of the best decisions they could have made. And you can kind of customize your yokai form while you're customizing your character. It's so damn cool. There's actually one thing I don't like. The fact that the end game is locked in New Game Plus 3. Now before you run off, no, you don't need to beat the game 3 times to get the full story experience. Don't worry about that. What I mean is that once you beat the game for the first time, you'll get access to a new rarity of armor that will obviously be more powerful than what you already have. And once you beat the game 3 more times, if I remember correctly, you'll unlock the highest rarity available in the game, which gives you much more freedom when it comes to build customization and customizing stuff. Once I heard about this, I actually really got obsessed with it, and I rushed through the other new games, which led me to being burnt out. So I recommend you to take it easy if getting to the end game is your goal. Don't rush through it and enjoy the game while you get there. Because there is a lot to do, and you already get a good amount of freedom when it comes to build customization. But yeah, I wish the end game wasn't so far away. When it comes to DLC, I've actually only beaten 2 of the 3 DLC available. Mainly because the enemies, just like the rest of the game, hit harder than my heart pain. Or a truck. Same thing. But maybe one of these days I'll drag my friend with me and go through the whole thing to get to the DLC. Sounds like a fun time, actually. But to wrap things up, I love this game to death. It's one of my favorites. And if you play Souls games and you like a little bit of a challenge, you might see why. Now, I'm not going to force you to play the game. Don't mind the red dot that is currently aiming at your chest. Not a threat at all. But I highly encourage you to try out the game if you're able to. And like this kind of genre. Regardless, I hope to see you there. And most importantly, I hope you have fun.